Joseph Stanislaw, aka Jersey Joe, accompanied me on today's episode as we preview Game 2 of Round 1 between the Hurricanes and the Devils. The Devils are looking for redemption after a not-so-good outing on Easter Sunday. And also, is it possible that all three Hughes brothers will be reunited at some point, whether it's in New Jersey or in Vancouver? What do I mean by that? Oh boy, we have a whole lot to break down on today's episode of Locked On Devils alongside Jersey Joe. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, College Hockey Club play announcer, Devils Wire Pucks Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. I am joined alongside my colleague over at Pucks and Pitchforks, Joseph Stanislaw, aka Jersey Joe. Jersey Joe, when this episode goes live, the Devils will take on the Hurricanes, Game 2 in the first round of the playoffs. They trail 1-0. Can the Devils tie it up? We'll have to wait and see.
Well, I mean, this team in the past 2 years was down 0-2, and people thought, there's no hope, dead in the water, let alone an unborn hero became a born hero in Akira Schmid, who saved the Devils' bacon. Well, can history rewrite itself for the Devils? I think there will be a good chance that there will be another star, but we don't know who that will be. I mean, all season long, I've been saying adversity is the best asset, but who will that star be? And can they maintain a healthy enough lineup to sustain that? That remains to be said.
We're going to talk about it on today's episode. But before we get into Game 2 previews and all that, I want to talk about some comments made by Jim Rutherford. I'm going to play the soundbite, and I want to get your thoughts on the matter. So let's listen in.
I think the greatest fear for Canuck fans here is 2 years from now. Quinn Hughes can become an unrestricted free agent. How cognizant are you with the moves that you're going to be making this summer and within these next 2 years? Do you consult with Quinn? Do you let him know what the game plan is? And when do you start thinking about an extension for Quinn Hughes? Because I think that'd be one loss with this franchise. I don't know if you'd ever bounce back if he was to leave here.
Totally agree, 100%. The one thing that we will be sure of, that we will have enough cap space to offer him the kind of contract that he deserves. That's the one thing we can prepare for. And it may not boil down to money with him. He said before he wants to play with his brothers. And that would be partly out of our control, in our control, if we brought his brothers here. So there's many moving parts here. Agree 100%. This franchise cannot afford to lose a guy like Quinn Hughes. And we will do everything we can to keep him here, but at the end of the day, it'll be his decision. Well, we got to be careful with tampering here, so we'll just leave it at that. I probably crossed the line, anyways.
Okay, that was Canucks president Jim Rutherford during his exit interview, talking about reuniting all three Hughes brothers, but not trading Quinn Hughes to the Devils, but getting not only Jack, but Luke as well to join Quinn up in Vancouver. I'm sure Gary Bettman is going to have a field day because I'm pretty sure that violates the tampering rules set in play. Jersey Joe, talk to me. What are we doing here?
Well, first off, the commissioner of the league is an actual lawyer in Gary Bettman. That is one of the many reasons why you keep the loud part quiet. because until July 1st, Canada Day is free agent frenzy. You can't just be like, oh, I think I'm gonna trade X for Y and Z, so and so, and then all of a sudden go, oh, now we're gonna get slapped with whatever fine Gary Bettman gives. Uh, now this, now let me go into details a little bit. They could be stripped of a few draft picks. They could be stripped of cap space or something. I'm not sure exactly, but Bettman has his ways of doing things. He's punished the Devils in the past, but he's probably going to punish Vancouver for mentioning the loud part out loud. But onto the other part, going for someone like Luke or Jack, they don't have the necessary assets to make it work. And don't you want to unite Quinn with Jack and Luke? Isn't that the whole point?
I mean, I think the latter half of what you just said is actually the easier thing in this whole silly season discussion, which is I think it's easier for Quinn to join Jack and Luke in New Jersey than it would to get Jack and Luke up in Vancouver. I don't think that's possible. Well, let me just make this clear. Both scenarios not happening. It's just a
Right.
pipe dream for a time being.
It's nothing but media field day in the crazy hotbeds of Hockey Canada. I mean, not the Team Canada, but I'm just mean the Madhouse, Crazy News Central, CBC, you name them. They're going to have, like you said, a field day. And all these rumors are going to circulate. And, this would put Vancouver, Jim Rutherford, on the back seat. And meanwhile, I was going to put Tom Fitzgerald on the front seat when it comes to negotiations. If they ever do come to getting a guy of Quinn Hughes' stature. As much as I love Quinn Hughes for being one of the fastest and more defensive-minded players as well as offensive, they need to focus more on forwards who are grittier and better finishers to complement Jack and Nico. They need to focus on that forward portion this offseason. I mean, we saw it in game one. When you're missing a few pieces, injured, you need to add some more different aspects. Like I always said, you need your Sasquatches, but you also need your finishers too.
And we're definitely going to talk about that momentarily. But before we give our thoughts on what happened on Easter Sunday, let me just put this into the light. Quinn Hughes has 2 years remaining on his contract. He's paid annually $7.85 million. He will become an unrestricted free agent in 2027. Jack Hughes, he has 5 years remaining on his deal. He will become an unrestricted free agent in 2030. He has a modified no trade clause that does not kick in until 2026. So theoretically, the Devils could trade him, but they're not going to. And Luke Hughes is in the final year of his entry-level contract. Once the playoffs conclude for the Devils, he will become a restricted free agent. I'm more than certain that that's going to be a priority for Tom Fitzgerald to bring Luke back. But I don't know why Jim Rutherford put that out there like that, saying like, I would love to reunite all three Hughes brothers. I'm sure every fan would like that to happen. It's one of the reasons why we like sports. But some things are just best to stay silent about because, like I said, Gary Bettman and company, they're going to have a field day with this one. They're going to have their hands tied behind their backs because that interferes with so many tampering violations.
Right. And like I said in the opening before I could even break down the whole Quinn Hughes thing, is a can of worms in itself. So it's just going to show how other GMs, how not to act and how to behave better.
Before we continue with today's episode, let me tell you guys about wonderful pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller all day long. Personally, I love the no shells variety. I'm constantly on the move. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. For content creators like me, get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Okay, let's get back to today's episode with Jersey Joe. Take it away once again. All right, let's talk about the Devils' lackluster Game 1 performance. I already gave my thoughts on the matter in my previous episode, did a post-game recap episode. I gave the Devils a solid D. I gave them some extra points just because Jacob Markstrom was really good. Nico Hischier, he was able to score in the second period to make sure that the Devils did not get shut out. The Devils dealt with multiple injuries to Brendan Dillon, Cody Glass, Luke Hughes, but he ended up returning. The Hurricanes dominated from start to finish. I don't know what Sheldon Keefe was talking about when he was assessing the first period. It was not a good performance by the Devils through and through. Jersey Joe, what were your thoughts from Game 1 on Easter Sunday?
They were disobeying the art of war. They were not following the principles. Where let me give you a little insight. If you really want to beat a team like the Hurricanes, you have to fake their left to go into their right. So you got to corkscrew them when you deceive them. So when you are looking kind of weak, you attack when they look too cocky. So if you can beat, let's say, a Jalen Chatfield, and you get him kind of, flat-footed, that's when you cut in and you get towards Freddie Anderson and you make that move, that power move, or you shoot the puck on net. Another thing is I'm meaning the Devils in this context, they needed to shoot the puck more at will, and they need to not play on the outer perimeter. They need to work more from the low and mid danger, work to the mid danger to high danger slots. They need to get what Bryce Albert would say, the slot chances need to be greater than, but you can't hold on to the puck for too long, because not just in the regular season, but in the postseason, that time gets smaller. It's a smaller window, and you need to shoot the puck more than you pass. You're not going to have those like Game 6 Eastern Conference Final tic-tac-toe power play goal that you had with Ilya Kovalchuk and Dina Zubris on that ice. That's not going to happen much these days. Defenders a lot quicker now and longer reaches. So you're not going to see those big setup plays. But the Devils need to move a little bit quicker laterally. They need to see more. They need to be a little bit less creative, but they can't be predictable. They have to be a little bit more forceful. They got to keep, and when they're defending, they got to do the blue line trap, not just a neutral zone trap. They also got to do the blue line trap, where they can stand up the Hurricanes forward 1, forward 2, and keep forward 3, 4, and 5. Well, I meant to say D1 and 2 from acting like forwards 4 and 5. So, with that being said, they need to slow down that Hurricane surge, and then have Markey play behind his net and reset the play and get the puck up quick and reset it and try and catch the Hurricanes off guard. But the attrition.
It's actually quite interesting that you mentioned the slot chances, because when it came to creating chances in the slot, the Devils were actually the second best team in the league when it came to that statistic. However, come Game 1, the Hurricanes completely clogged up the lanes, and we saw it throughout the course of the game. And I think Jim Behringer brought it up on social media. The Devils did not do a good job of handling the puck in neutral zone. And we talked about that Chatfield goal. That was from the result of losing a faceoff, which gives you possession. I think the name of the game for the Devils in Game 1 just looking back at everything, they struggled with possession. They couldn't handle the puck. They couldn't sustain offensive zone time. PK Subban broke it down in between periods. You can't win games if you're not in your offensive end. Simple as that. And the Devils did none of that. And it brings up this interesting talking point, and I want to get your thoughts on it. Do you think the Devils should split up Nico Hischier and Jesper Bratt to spread out the scoring just a little bit more? Because let's face it, I've talked good about Dawson Mercer. I've talked good about Eric Haula. I've talked good about Andre Palat, but I'm not banking on them to like elevate their scoring a little bit. I think they should elevate their games, but the Devils need more scoring. And I put more trust in Jesper Bratt and Nico Hischier.
Let me put it this way. It'd be like putting all of your money in the S&P 500 and expecting it to outperform every time. You need to spread your money along other ETFs. In this case, you need to put just a fair amount on the first line, the second line, third, and fourth line. Because if you don't rebalance a guy like a Bratt to the second line and then you move Timo up to right wing on the first line, you're going to have too many predictabilities. You're tipping your hand to the Hurricanes saying, "Oh, I know how to play this line. I can predict to shut down A, B, and C, but D might be playing with A and B now." So if player D performs well with guys A and B really well, and they start clicking and they start performing and they give the Devils an advantage, maybe the lines 2 and 3 and 4 can do a little bit more and start to actually give Markstrom a nice, comfortable lead. And then hopefully defensively, they can clog up the defensive zone and the neutral zone. And when I say the defensive zone, I actually mean the high danger chances. So I'll give people a heads up. When I look at amateur goalies in the draft, I look to see how well those goalies handle high danger percentages. And when you see a guy like Markstrom, they do well covering the high danger slots. But the lower their percentage in the high danger is bad because it's not just the goalie, it's the defense in front that isn't clearing the attempt in the milliseconds to clear out a visual lane to actually catch the puck right in time. And there was one point yesterday, Markstrom was this close to having the puck tip off his glove and almost go in. And Luke Hughes cleared the puck before he could even get to the goal line.
Now, I want to bring this up. The Devils have a lot of former Hurricanes players on the roster, and I was seeing some outlandish takes saying that, Dougie Hamilton, Stefan Nason, Eric Haula, Brett Pesce, they played all these minutes or all this time with the Hurricanes, and yet they didn't pass the information to their teammates or something. I'm like, I'm pretty sure they did. You can prepare all you want. The Hurricanes are a very good team.
They got the depth.
And the Devils are missing their star player in Jack Hughes. They're missing a solid defenseman in Jonas Siegenthaler. And this Devils team, they are not championship contenders. As proven after the Christmas break. If they make it past the first round, with all due respect, that's an achievement. That's a big-time achievement. I don't think they're going further than the second round.
Yeah, so when I tell people this, I see everyone write crap on X, and they're like, "Oh, they're this and that, yada yada." I said, in 2024, we would have loved to have been in the playoffs, just one game. This team got 91 points, and it's not just because of Markstrom; it's because they played as a collective. And Jack Hughes being out taught this team how to play better puck possession games and how to score without him. And it made Jesper Bratt become more responsible as a forward. And we started to see Timo Meier step it up. And you mentioned it a lot on your podcast. And I'm going to say this here on out. When the Devils get Arseny Gricic this offseason and potentially Lenny Haminaho, this team's going to be even deeper when it comes to scoring. And then you got to also add in free agency with that $12 million. Can
But
they?
here's the thing: they're going to a good chunk of that money is going to Luke Hughes.
Exactly. But they might have to move Dawson Mercer via trade, potentially with Shimon Nemeth. I don't want to have to move on from him, but you have to have a sacrificial lamb to get something better.
I mean, I've said it before. I like Nemeth, but it's either him, Seamus Casey, who I think has more potential, or Ethan Edwards, who's also a highly touted young defenseman.
And the thing is like people crap on Fitzgerald for not being a really good drafting GM. He's actually got some really good value picks, but he's also made some really good flips when it comes to trades, and it's actually panned out the last couple of seasons. We've seen it, along with the Timo Meier deal, improve our team. Now it's just a matter of adding external pieces to the core. And if we land someone like a Sam Bennett type player, or just anyone of physicality and clutchness, can actually make us a little bit more dangerous. I'm not saying we're going to get him. I'm just going to say a player of that caliber.
I mean, and I was seeing people on social media talk about how the Devils selected Chase Stillman over Logan Stankoven. And my thing is, like, Stankoven wasn't selected right after Chase Stillman. It was a few more picks after that. In fact, Stankoven was selected in the second round.
And not to mention this, but 2020 through 2021 was during the COVID seasons when scouting was really more so remote and they couldn't get a whole lot of games. So getting a random player with less amount of games covered on certain players does hurt your chances versus getting a bigger sample size. And also, when you don't really get to know the player and then you get a little too close to one versus a smaller batch, it does hurt your chance of trying to hit on a guy. But I was not even hearing anything about a Stillman during that draft. But when you have 2 to 3 first round picks, you can afford to miss on one.
Let's shift back to the playoffs. I'm sure we'll talk like off-season content when that time comes around, and based on how this series is going, well, maybe it won't be in the distant future. I'm just joking.
Yeah, I really, not far.
I really do want the Devils to do well, but I just don't think they have the firepower to make it far in the playoffs. But for me, it was playoffs or bust. So let's get back to this series against the Hurricanes. The Devils are down 1-0. It's first to 4. Even if the Devils lose their next game, they still got 2 more games at home to try to redeem themselves. And I think they perform decent on the road. And I think they can definitely use some home cooking their way. The big thing for the Devils is that they cannot be trailing after the second period, because come from behind victories, that's been a weakness for them. So if they're down even 2-1 after the second period, the odds are not stacked in their favor. They only have 1 win this season when it comes to trailing after the second period and amounting to comeback and winning. The odds are not in their favor. So what needs to happen for the Devils to make this a competitive series? Because I don't think it's the physicality aspect.
They also have to be able to make more tape passes more. They also need to be more in sync when it comes to defensemen joining with the forwards, not being offside so many times. They need to win more faceoffs. And they also got to be able to be more assertive when it comes to being up in the slot and the high danger. So more traffic in front of Freddie Anderson. Freddie Anderson is an above average goalie. He's not the best goalie on the planet. I hate to tell Hurricanes fans that and the Devils fans that. He's just a goalie who's just good enough to be on a Hurricanes team. he's saved many times by their forechecking and their defense. That's what he is. Other than that, Markstrom's the better goalie. But the Devils' defense lately, they need to step up, keeping guys being pushed away from the slot, not have to, cross check the numbers. I mean, push guys out from trying to evade the defender. So the Devils need to do that. They need to stay in position, need to make sure they tie up sticks, but don't cause any crazy penalties. Dawson Mercer needs to cut back on the stupid delay of game plays. So that's another thing he needs to work on. But they need to have a guy up front on net, on offense, to create those funny bounce goals. I remember in 2012, there were a lot of funny bounces by the Carter Gianta Bernier line. And I remember one of which was a Marek Zidlitsky goal that came from a pass by Steve Bernier that came right off the sidewall. And he bombed one home, and Carter tipped it in.
Before we close out today's episode with Jersey Joe, let me tell you guys about FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel, you can place your first $5 bet, and you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team, the Los Angeles Lakers, or diving into player props. I think Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and company will redeem themselves in Game 2 against the T-Wolves. Fingers crossed, Lakers in 5, in the words of Shannon Sharp. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. All right, let's close out today's episode with Jersey Joe. Take it away once again. I think breakout passes is definitely something that the Devils need to work on. In fact, that's something that they were asked during their recent media availabilities. They're still trying to figure out the Hurricanes, but we contributed in a recent article for Pucks and Pitchforks talking about our expectations, some of our predictions. I've said it on this show. My expectations for the Devils, anywhere from moderate to low. I said if all goes well for them, like I'm talking about they got their scoring together. I'm talking about the depth assets really pull through. I'm talking if Jacob Markstrom is absolutely on his A game. The Devils could probably win it in 7 if they're lucky.
Right.
But the odds are not stacked in their favor. I think of all the playoff teams, of all the series, I think this one is where people have the least amount of expectations for. They're projecting for the Hurricanes to handle the Devils in 4 or 5. If we're being honest. So can you talk about what you said in the article to close things out and to also give your expectations moving forward?
Before the start of Game 1, I said that they need to keep Carolina to the outside, and they also got to cover Seth Jarvis and Dmitry Orlov more, because Orlov's been a guy on defense who has been a offensive defenseman throughout his career in Washington, who's been a pest his whole entire life against the Devils. Like, no matter if you Ovechkin in the past over the years in DC to a goal or point minimum, Orlov would just jump in and just like make things a living hell. And to me, he's a guy I would absolutely love to Sasquatch into the boards if I was a Devils player. Seth Jarvis is a guy who, when I was watching him in his draft year, I knew he could pop bottles, but he does have an edge to his game. And I thought he would have gone to Winnipeg in that draft, but I wish that if the Devils had not gotten Mercer, I wish they would have gotten him, because I know the kind of player he is, and he's an elite shooter. So he's another guy you got to cover.
Well, Devils when it comes to scoring, they're a little spread thin. Like I trust Jesper Bratt, but Rod Brindamore even said that the name of the game for the Hurricanes is to smother Bratt and make sure that they take him out the game. Because if you take Bratter out the game, where are the points going to come from? Because Nico Hischier relies on Jesper Bratt a lot when it comes to like points and things like that. If I can say that, Nico Hischier and Jesper Bratt work in tandem. So if you take one of them out the game, then it works into your favor. Obviously, they don't have to worry about Jack Hughes. Nico is a good two-way player, but he's going to have to focus more on the defensive end because the Devils' defense is anywhere from solid to mediocre to horrendous. It depends on the day. They have physicality. Stefan Nason, Paul Cotter, Brendan Dillon. We'll have to wait and see what his injury update is. Sheldon Keefe said for a time being he doesn't have an update on the players that were injured, including Dillon and Glass. Hughes did return from injury to come back into the game. This series, it's just so weird seeing this Devils team in the playoffs, if I could say that, because it was a tale of two halves. Because before Christmas break, the Devils were really good, like one of the scariest teams in the league. But after the Christmas break, they were very inconsistent. They were barely a 500 team, and it seemed like they couldn't win no more than 3 in a row. That's been an issue the past couple of years.
Well, also the Metropolitan had gotten a little bit weaker, if I can say that with confidence.
The Rangers, Islanders, Blue Jackets, they were in the Devils' rearview mirror. But anytime they got close, it seemed like something would go wrong. Like, I thought the Rangers would sneak their way into the wild card. I really did. But they completely folded, I think, once March rolled around.
Yeah, well, as the games got to be less and less, the Devils did eventually step it up enough. I mean, they just had enough gas left in the tank. And for next season, in the offseason, Trey, they're going to have to add to that core. They need to have that hybrid system. They can't just be all finesse and some defense. They need to add more defenders and finishers. They got to get more physical, because when it comes to teams like a Carolina,
I respectfully disagree with you when it comes to physicality. I don't think that's the problem. Like, Paul Cotter broke the single season hits record. Stefan Nason is aggressive. Brendan Dillon will drop the mitts when he has to. He hasn't.
I'm talking a little different. I'm talking a little different though. I'm talking about being able to punish teams in the neutral zone, winning those board battles, winning those puck battles on the offensive end. You can't just do it in your own zone. You got to drive teams down into the ground, because if you're not going to be able to get that puck back, how are you going to win? Because it's not like you can do it in a non-hockey way. You have to be able to get that puck back. That way you can actually chip to the next guy and set up right in the slot and score a beautiful bar down goal. Stankoven had 2 of those. And we need to have someone that can do that for us. And that's why when I mentioned in the past couple articles with Gritsuk on his way, that's a guy that's going to make a difference, being a finisher and having someone who can set up a guy like him. And then Haminaho he may not be the fastest of skaters, but he's one of the more set players to play on a third line, who has really good hands, who can snipe and play make, and can also make the Devils deeper and make them a little bit harder to be predictable. So, with that being mentioned, when they look to the outside of the organization this offseason, seeing the holes that are being opened in this playoff series versus Carolina, it's showing Tom Fitzgerald what he needs to fix.
Yeah, I mean, this Devils team, I guess they still got a ways away before they're considered like legitimate. title contenders. And the Devils did have a player of that caliber, like you just mentioned. They did. I'm not going to mention his name, but they did.
I know who you mean.
You know who I mean. Like, he was great in the faceoffs. He was not afraid to work the dirty areas, give the Devils possession, was having a historic season in terms of faceoffs. But I think you know who I'm referring to.
Yeah, his teammate is still playing with us. They used to be in Mississauga, which they moved to Brampton.
Yeah.
Just a little hint.
I think everyone knows who I'm referring to. I won't mention his name, but the Devils did have that type of player, and unfortunately, it's hard to replace someone of that caliber. But I don't miss having him on the roster for obvious reasons. But focusing back on the now and what the Devils need to do, I think my closing remarks are the Devils, they have their hands behind their backs. They're pinned against the corner. This is a Hurricanes team that always plays physical against them. This is a Hurricanes team that takes no prisoners. We saw Eric Haula go toe-to-toe with Dmitry Orlov a few months back, like in December. We saw Timo Meier. He got ejected for supposedly, quote-unquote, kneeing Martin Necas, who's no longer on the team. He's in Colorado. But you get the gist of it, which is these two teams don't like each other. I would say outside of the Rangers, this is one of the Devils' biggest rivals in the Metro.
Of all the rivalries that the Devils had, regular season, postseason, this is my number one, because this is unacceptable the way they played yesterday. And there are a lot of people from the Garden State who live down in Carolina, the two Carolinas, and that would have normally filled that building. But I think some of them have converted to being Hurricanes fans, fair weather fans. So it goes to show you how people can turn on a dime. But you know what? I hate when people say, the future is bright.
No, the future is now. The
future is now.
No more. I'm tired of that excuse.
I tell people the future is brighter now.
Yes.
It's not later. It's now.
Look, Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, they have playoff experience. Paul Cotter, Curtis McDermott, Andre Palat, Jake Allen, they have championship experience. I am done with that excuse.
Also, you seen what I posted yesterday on my X. I said, to be a successful playoff team, you need to draft well, you need to sign wisely, you need to trade wisely, you need to develop wisely, you need to hire the right managers and scouts to help build a foundation. They need to find a better way of developing the better players, for the next couple of years to get to this playoff atmosphere. They need to be better competitors, and they need to be more physical in the face-off dot. They need to be more, how do I put this? They need to be more cutthroat when it comes to clutchness. They need to find the right people to get the best out of each player. I need to see Sheldon Keefe step up not just the bench, but he needs to get in between, on and off the ice, getting the team set for that Pat Burns moment.
Well, the last time that the Devils hired a coach who previously coached the Maple Leafs, they ended up winning the cup, and that was Pat Burns in 2003. Rest in peace to an absolute legend. By the way, I admire Sheldon Keefe and his ability to adapt, because last season he missed Austin Matthews and William Nylander for a few games, yet the Maple Leafs were able to toughen it up and force a Game 7 against the Bruins. Like, it was a competitive 7-game series. They did not end up winning. But when you're missing Austin Matthews for a few games, when you're missing William Nylander for a few games, Nylander arguably the Leafs' best contributor when it comes to the playoffs, that's a tough blow. And Sheldon Keefe still found a way, and Devils were dealing with injury towards the end of the season. Sheldon Keefe made sure to keep the Devils afloat. So, Jersey Joe, any final thoughts?
All right, so there's actually a couple of things. If you told me a few seasons back that we would end up with Sheldon Keefe, I'd be more thrilled to say, sign me up. Where's the dotted line? The other thing is, in the art of war, Sun Tzu got the most out of his soldiers, even when they were less trained and skilled, but they were able to step it up into a system, and they were able to conquer with less people and be more efficient. Sheldon Keefe needs to find a way to get more efficiency out of his forechecking on the offensive attacks, and they need to win more in the neutral zone, and they need to step up when it really matters. They can't just let Carolina just jump from the first second on the puck drop. They have to start jumping them and setting the tone. So when you set the tone, you're showing them that you're ready to rock and roll with them. But you still have to play your game. Don't play their game, because then they're going to pull you in. So you don't want to play the Carolina style. You want to play Jersey style. You want to rock. You want to throw hip checks. Get under the skin of Carolina. Do everything to silence that crowd. Do everything to goad that opponent into a penalty. It's the small little things. Look at what Nico did. He was able to draw a couple penalties in the offensive zone. Got to do those small things. Change those small things.
And we'll see what game 2 has in store when this episode goes live. The Devils still in Raleigh, still alive and well. We'll see what game number 2 has in store for us. Jersey Joe, thank you for taking the time, as always, to come on to the show and talk all things Devils. Where can my audience find you at?
You find me on Pucks and Pitchforks, X, and Instagram. I don't have my own podcast anymore, but I am always here. I'm always on Instagram and X. So if you need me, don't be afraid to hit me up. I'm up to talking about anything and trying to break down whether it's rumors or just things that are going on in the NHL, not just Devil stuff.
Awesome. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again. Like I do to close out every episode, continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I hope you guys enjoy game 2. Thanks for listening once again, and special thanks to Jersey Joe for coming on yet again.